mean, there have been shocking events at Mainz 05 because Bo Svensson is not the coach anymore. He stepped back. We talked about it already. Bo Svensson giving his farewell in tears. How could that happen? I mean, if you would have asked me before the season, I would have thought everything's okay at Mainz. Yes, Anton Stach left the club to Hoffenheim, a very important player, but overall, the impression wasn't that Mainz could have to do anything with a relegation fight. So, what happened?
Well, that's really been the question of the past couple of days and weeks. And I think it's very hard to grasp. If you talked to Bo Svensson before the season, he was quite happy with the players that he had. He did, as much as we heard, fight to keep Anton Stach. And I think the transfers are maybe a bigger part of the picture than people would have thought before the season, because there's been, well, how do you put it? Some changes in how the story is being told. For example, Bo Svensson has been in Mainz or was in Mainz for 3 years, and he always said he wanted a small team. He did not want too many players because he wanted all the players to have a real chance to really be playing. Plus, he wanted the young players from the other teams at the club to have a chance to kind of slip in. And now all of a sudden the story has been changed by Christian Heidel, who says, well, we needed to have a small team because of economics. And of course, there's a big difference. Do you have a coach who says, I want it that way? Or do you have a head of sports as Christian Heidel and a sporting director and Martin Schmidt who say, we have to have it that way because of economics? And there have been more story changings like that. For example, there has been the big question about Bo Svensson himself and extending his contract because it would have ended in the summer anyway. And before the season, the story was, well, we want to fix up the team, and as soon as we've done that, we will talk about the contract. But we will not want to wait until Christmas, and then the season kind of got going, and it didn't start as well as everybody thought. And then the story was, well, we want to give each other time until maybe Christmas. And I think there's been overall problems with the communication. Of course, the communication does not have a direct influence on how the team is playing, but there has been some felt turbulences. Plus, of course, you have so many injured players, and there's been weird stories around that too. For instance, Nelson Viper, the young player, is the kicker, wrote that he thought he wanted a second opinion on his injuries, and he got an operation supposedly against the will of the club at that time. And there's maybe a link to Jonathan Burkhardt, another young and very talented player who's been out of the game for 1 year now because of injury after injury. So there have maybe been some questions about how do all these injuries come together and why are the players injured for so long. So there's a lot of things that, you know, if you look at it, you would say that does not have anything to do with what's happening on the pitch. But when all of that comes together, maybe in the end, it really does.
Raphael.
Yeah, I mean, Mara, I'm still shocked, I must say. I find it hard to process. A coach who worked so well for this team, who's building a reputation as someone who's going to be an absolute superstar, inevitably. And of course, there are always reasons that go beyond the actual performances, but how did the performances themselves suffer so much? I mean, that was a big shock for me.
And I must say that really is the thing that no one so far has been able to figure out. I mean, if any of the people at the club did, hopefully they would have helped their coach. If the coach himself did, he would have been able to help himself or help the team. I mean, you must say, of course, if you find yourself at the end of the table, there's always reasons for that, and you always, in a way, belong there. But if you look at game after game, it's really been kind of shit showy. I mean, you have the first game at Union Berlin, and Ajorg verschießt den Elfer. Sorry.
Yeah, he missed a penalty.
You have the first game at Union Berlin, and Ajorg missed 2 penalties, not 1, but 2. And it's not only that he did not score the goals, but that kind of broke the guy, because before he came to Mainz, he had a really hard time. Then he has played half a season in Mainz, and it's been really well. And he comes out for the new season, and that mishappening is taking place. And it really did something to him. So you lose the first game against a club who's almost lost every game after that. Then you have the second game against Eintracht Frankfurt, and you are playing a really good game, and you get an equalizer in like the last second of the game, and of course all these things they are happening, but if you have those things happening game after game, it does something to you. Then you go to Werder Bremen and you say, okay, Werder Bremen is a game you see eye to eye with the other club, and that's something you have to win. And you really go down in Bremen bad, and there's no good explanation for that. Then you come back again. Then you have like a game in Augsburg where you score a very early goal, and then you score supposedly a second goal, but it's like a millimeter offside, and then that does something to your head, and then you lose that game, which after like 10 minutes in the game, everybody thought you would get your first win of the season. So there's been a mix of, well, not doing as well as everybody expected, that messing with your head, but also bad luck. And then I think the team, in a way, mentally was not prepared for what was happening. And I know that the question of like, if you have a sports psychology under helping at the club has been in the discussion for some time. Like if you ask about that topic, they will be like, oh, we don't need that. But maybe really in a way you do. And in a situation like that, you do. For me, and that's just my personal judgment, if I look at the last couple of weeks, I did get the impression that Bo Svensson within the club was kind of left alone, because Bo Svensson, I mean, I think we can all agree he comes off as a person who's rather sensitive. He was feeling that a lot of the people that support the club were really, really unhappy with what was happening. And he's someone who kind of reacts to that. And then you had all the things that we like touched before that were being turbulent. Plus you had the whole El Ghazi story, which you touched upon earlier. And he sat there press conference after press conference just by himself. And if you have a situation like that at the club, and you have so many questions from the journalists that don't really touch the next game, but that touch everything else that's going on in the club, I think you need the head of sports or the president or whoever to sit with him and to kind of bounce off these questions, because you could see in the press conferences that he was getting more and more frustrated that he had to answer all these questions, and that in a situation where he really needed to focus on the sport, he couldn't do it because there were so many other questions. And I think that's really something the people at the club have to look at and have to work on, because I think mistakes were being made, and not just by Bo Svensson. And my personal take is that Christian Heidel told the story how Bo Svensson, after that bad game in Berlin at the Cup, came to them and said he doesn't feel like he's the right guy at the right time anymore. And well, of course, you have two solutions. You can say, yes, we agree, or you can say, no, we don't agree. You are the right guy. Things are going bad, but we will turn them around together. And they chose not to do that. So you can say he stepped back because he offered, or because he gave his estimation that things are, problematic. But I think if everybody was still convinced to go on together, they could have done that. And the question is, if you have been such a good working trio as Heidel, Schmidt, and Svensson, how did they come to the point that they thought, well, Svensson is not the guy who will get us out of here? Because a lot of people still thought he was. A lot of people thought he wasn't. But there's a question about that too.
Mara, now Bo Svensson is history. Jan Siewert is, what is he? The caretaker manager? Is he the new manager? And how do you judge him? So he he was coaching the under-23 team of Mainz, or the second team. Some of our English listeners know him from his famous spell at, we have to admit, very unsuccessful spell at Huddersfield. So what's his role now? And has he turned around things? Because in his first match, Mainz won 2-0 against Leipzig, a sensational win. And this weekend, there was a 0-0 draw in a kind of local derby in Darmstadt. So how do you judge the new situation and Jan Siewert?
I think it's still very early to do that. For once, of course, Jan Siewert for the time being was a logic solution, because he's already at the club and he could take right over. And the club thought, I think rightly so, that Babak Kehanfa, which was Bo Svensson's was, so much a team with Bo Svensson, that if Bo Svensson stepped back, Babak Kehanfa would not go on either, or they wouldn't go on with him. So to take Jan Siewert was an easy solution. And of course, that the guy has experience, plus the work between the first team and the second team in Mainz is pretty close. So everybody knows each other. Jan Siewert knows the players, and he already coached them for one game before Bo Svensson took over 3 years ago. So he was the go-to guy. I mean, everybody pretty much expected that. I know there are a lot of people that have their heart in for the club, who hope that Benny Hoffmann, who coaches the under-19, will be like the long-term solution. Personally, I think you would burn him in a situation like that. He's a really good coach, and he's been very, very successful with the under-19. And I think because they're playing European this season, they should really let him stay where he is right now. He will be a head coach, and maybe in Mainz one day, and I think he will do great. But I think this would not be a fair situation to put him in. As for Jan Siewert, I think the fact that he's been coaching the Premier League probably played a role too. to really judge the two games, I think it's kind of hard because it might sound funny, but Mainz has actually looked very, very good against Leipzig in the last years. They have won quite some games against Leipzig, especially at home, but also last season, the game in Leipzig, 3-0. It was actually before the game against Leipzig. Now the last game they played 2-0. And before he took over, it was pretty clear because of the break we have now that he would at least have those two games. And I really thought that Darmstadt was the harder game, you know, because against Leipzig, there was really not much to lose. And then he won. And of course, that's great. And it's important because it's the first win of the season. But the game against Darmstadt, I mean, it was just horrible. And it really was. And I mean, the club said afterwards, yeah, okay, it's the second game that we played 2-0. But really, I mean, Darmstadt has been scoring so little goals. Of course, yes, they kept clean there, but even in a situation like that, if you don't even score a goal against Darmstadt, Mainz 05, as far as I know, is the first team this season that didn't score against Darmstadt. And if you don't even score one goal against a team down there that is so weak, who do you want to score goals or win games against? I mean, that game, I think after the game against Leipzig was a real setback, and I did not understand the celebratory how celebratory the club talked about it.
It's funny that you said how horrible the game was, because I was saying the same about the Darmstadt-Bochum match the week before. I was saying at that time it was probably the worst game of the season. So a tough competition.